Well, we're continuing our series through prayer. The goal is to tackle every single passage on prayer in hopes that we can have a pretty solid foundation concerning what prayer is. So let's look together at Luke chapter 11, verse 1, and then we'll get to our lesson. So let's begin chapter 11, verse 1. Now Jesus was praying in a certain place, and when he finished, one of his disciples asked or said to him, "Lord, teach us to pray, as John taught his disciples." So here's the lesson. We can learn to pray. We can learn to pray. I remember in my college years, I prayed in a large group on one occasion, and one of my fellow students that was in the group made fun of my prayer out loud in front of about 70 people. And I remember at first thinking to myself, okay, what a jerk. But secondly, I thought, well, maybe I don't really know how to pray. For some of us, it could be that we would pray, but our prayerlessness is rooted in the fact that we've never been taught. We don't know how to pray. Those that are new to the faith, maybe you've recognized that it can be a bit awkward when you first try to pray. You've never done it before, and much like a first date, for those that have been there and done that, do you remember how self-conscious you were? When you were thinking to yourself, okay, am I doing this right? Am I gonna get another date out of this? You're wondering to yourself if you're gonna make a good impression. Well, it's often the same with God. Speaking to God, it feels a bit awkward at first. It feels strange when you first try and do it. And we sometimes torture ourselves with inner questionings. We say, well, was I sincere when I said that? Or should I bow my head every time? Where do I put my hands? Should I end every prayer with an amen? What does amen mean anyway? Right? Well, thankfully, God has not left us alone to figure these things out. In fact, the disciples asked Jesus how to pray. And Jesus provides for them a model prayer, and it is often called the Lord's Prayer. Now, we're not going to get into the Lord's Prayer. We're going to tackle that in another video in another time. But this passage teaches us here that we've just read that prayer is learned. So for those that are discouraged, understand you can learn to pray. You can learn how to pray. We can have hope because Jesus has truly taught us to pray. It's okay to begin the Christian life with little knowledge or with little experience concerning prayer. Just as children need to be taught how to move from crying to actually using their words, well, God's children can be taught to grow in their prayer life with God. If you've ever learned a foreign language, maybe you've recognized that you learn it best when you actually are put in scenarios in which you use it, in which you speak it. Just as there was hope for the disciples to learn how to pray, there's hope for you and I to learn how to pray. Why? Because in this passage we learn that Jesus has taught us, and therefore we can learn to pray. So I know sometimes prayer can be discouraging. Plug on, start praying, and over time, as we continue on in this series and read more and more about prayer, I'm sure that your prayer life is going to become greater and greater and greater as you become closer and closer to the Lord because of it. Well, thank you so much. God bless you in a way.